G'day everybody, welcome to another Affinity photo tutorial. This week we're going to blend 7 different photographs to make my composite that I call the Night's Guard. So we're going to start off with this photo of our night here, and as you can see I have used my selection brush tool and I have made a selection of the night. First thing I'm going to do with my night is just go Command J to make a copy, so that'll just put a copy of my night on its own background here. So let's get rid of those marching ants with our Command D. First thing though, I'll come back to the background layer first. I want to create a selection of this stone texture. So I'm on the background layer. I'm going to come over here to my rectangular marquee tool. I'm just going to draw out a selection of this stone here and just move it over a little bit. And just go again, Command J with that. Now we can turn off the background layer. So we've just got that selection of the stone. Then Command D to remove those marching ants. We're just going to use this stone purely for texture. So next thing we'll do is come up here to our night. I'm just going to rename him Night Left, because we're going to have 2 of these nights in our picture today. And I'm going to add a black and white adjustment layer. So I'm coming down here to my adjustments and black and white. I'm going to clip that to my night. So my night is now black and white. Now this background or texture, stone texture, I'm going to call this stone text 1 because we're going to use 2 stone textures, and I'm going to clip that texture to my night as well. Over here on my move tool now, I can move that texture in place and stretch it up all the way over my night. Now on that stone texture that we've got here, I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply, and you can see now it's put that texture all over our night. I'm going to bring over another stone as well, which is this stone texture here, and Command C and copy Command V over here on our night. I've clipped that to my night as well. So, and I'm going to resize that. So I'm going to turn it round and move it into place, and then I'm going to make it a lot smaller. Come up here to the top and move that down as well. We're getting that really nice texture. I'm going to change that to multiply as well. Now we've got that texture on there as well, and it creates this really nice stone look. You can see these crevices in our night. Okay, what we'll do while we're here is we will add a levels adjustment. And that's also clipped to our night, and we'll just bring this white level down a little bit just to put a bit of light on there and just a tiny little bit of output black here. So now we can really see our night and all that stonework. So we'll put all that together, and we're going to move on to our mountain. We'll come back to our night later. So we've got our night sorted. So let's come over here to our mountain. And with the mountain here, I also took my selection brush tool, and as you can see, if I turn off the background and the foreground, I've already made a selection of the mountain as well, and I've already made a selection of the foreground, 2 separate layers. So we don't need the foreground at the moment, so we'll just turn that off. And on our background here, which we'll call mountain, we'll call that mountain left as well, because we're going to come back, have 2 copies of this as well. So let's come over to our move tool now, and now we can move our mountain in place. And I'm going to make it a bit bigger. Just using my Command minus to make that a little bit smaller, the picture, and just drag that out. I'm going to move it back to about this little point on the mountain here, up and back to about there. So that looks pretty good. Also on this mountain, I'm going to add an exposure adjustment, fit that to my mountain. I'm going to make that quite dark, all the way dark about there. And click off. And I'm going to invert that with a Command I. I'm going to call that shadow, and we'll come back to that a little bit later as well. So let's bring over our night now. So let's come over here to our night, and all we have to do with our night is go Command C and copy all of those layers. It'll just copy all of those layers. Come over to our mountain and Command V. We've got our night, but we don't want him clipped to the mountain, so let's just bring him up to the top. Make him a little bit smaller, and we want him flipped around the other way. So let's go Arrange and Flip Horizontal. I'm going to place him right up the top here. Make him a little bit bigger. Place him right up the top. That looks right about there. So on our night, now going to add a mask. So let's come down here to masks and add a mask to our night. Over here to our brushes. Want a nice soft brush. Want to make sure we are going to paint in black, so let's make sure it's on black. I'm going to bring my flow all the way down to about 5%. Very low on the flow. We can resize our brush with our right and left bracket keys, and then I'm going to start blending my night into the mountain. At this point, I'm going to drop my flow down to 2%, very, very low. Make my brush a lot bigger, and then I'm just going to blend that in a little bit more. Looking pretty good. I'm quite happy with that at the moment, so let's leave that as it is. Let's collapse all of those. And let's come back here to our mountain now and come down to that exposure or the shadow. So we've still got a low flow. Let's take it up to, again, about 5. We've still got our soft brush, and this time we want to paint in white. And we're going to paint some shadow on this side of the mountain. Helps blend that in as well. You can always come back and tweak this a little bit later. That's not looking too bad. Now we want to put a shadow on our soldier's flag here. So I'm going to bring the flow up to about 10. Make that a lot smaller. Just click just below where that flag is. Hold shift down and then click right on the bottom here, and we'll get that shadow in. We may have to darken that up a little bit later as well. That is our mountain. Now we're going to group all that in one group. Call that right side. So that's the right side of our picture, which includes our mountain and our night. So we're going to copy that whole right side with the Command J, and we're going to call the copy left side and hit enter. So now we've got the left side. Let's come over here to our move tool. Come up here to, again, arrange and flip horizontal. And let's move our other copy to the other side, just before that little outcrop on the mountain here. So now we've got both sides of our picture in place. Remember the foreground that I made a separate copy? We can turn that on now and move that up to the top. On the move tool, I'm just going to stretch that out a little bit. So it's about there. So now we've got our foreground and our mountain and our nights in place. So now it's time to put our background in place. I'm going to use this picture here. Don't worry about the wolves, you won't see those. Let's copy that one with our Command C back over to our mountain, and we want that underneath both of the right side and left side of our mountain. So I'm just going to click on the background of the mountain here. So when I go Command V, it'll put it behind. And now I'm just going to stretch that out. Bring it in. Don't want to see the wolf, just out there, and stretch that out a little bit more. Now we've got our background in place, and that's looking pretty good. So I'm happy with that at the moment. So the next thing we're going to do is bring our castle in, and this stone ball here as well that I'm going to use. I'm just going to, on this layer, unlock that. Come over here to my move tool. It's going to make that a little bit smaller and move it into the middle. And I've got this castle as well, a picture of this castle. And again, you can see I've used my selection brush tool and made a selection of the castle. I only want this part. So I'm just going to copy that over to the stone ball. So just Command C, over here to the stone ball, and Command V. I'm going to sit that right on top. About there, looks pretty good. Going to come to the background of the stone ball here and click on that and come up to select and selection from layer, just so it puts a selection around the stone ball. And I'm going to come up here and invert the selection. Clicking back on the castle, let's rename that castle. Clicking back on that layer, I'm going to grab my erase brush, and now I can just erase just those areas there that I don't want, and a little bit of this area here that we don't want. Let's get rid of the marching ants with the Command D. On the castle layer, let's put a mask. Let's click on our brush. We've still got our soft brush. Bring our flow down to about 5%. And we want to be painting in black again. So I'm going to make my brush quite big for this, and I'm just going to blend that in. Don't worry too much because we won't see a lot of it. We're just probably going to see just the top part. So let's just blend that in. That's not looking too bad. So once we've blended that in, we're just going to click on both of those layers and group them, Command G, and call that the castle layer. Now we can copy that whole group, Command C. Back to our mountain layer, and we want it above the background here. So let's just go Command V and put that in above our background. Let's make it a bit bigger and bring it down sort of about there. Let's have a look at that, maybe a little bit bigger. And then on that group, we'll add another mask. Then we'll make our flow on our brush. Let's grab our brush. We've still got that soft brush. Let's make the flow about 20% this time. Again, we want to paint in black, so I'm going to hit X on my keyboard to swap these colors. Then we're going to bring that cloud layer just in front of our stone ball here. That looks like it's sitting in the clouds. If you want to take a little bit away, just X on the keyboard. Take a little bit away there. That looks like it's sitting in the background in the clouds, but the other thing we're going to do on that castle layer is add a Gaussian blur. And I'm going to blur that 1 pixel, just so it looks like it's fading into the background a little bit more. There we go. We've got our castle and our stone ball in place in the background. That's looking pretty good. So we're going to add some birds now. So let's just collapse that layer. So we'll come over here to the birds that we've got here and Command C. Back to our mountain layer, collapse that. And we'll put the birds above that background as well with a Command V. We'll put a few copies of these birds in. Let's change the blend mode to darken. Over here to our move tool, and we're going to make that a little bit smaller. We're going to, like I said, put a fair few copies of these birds in. And what I'm going to do on these layers for the birds is drop them 50% opacity, just so they look like they're in the background. Now we're going to get a little bit of an edge on here, and we'll fix that up later. So let's make another copy, and then we'll drag them over here. And another copy. I'm going to put that sort of down here. That one right in the front, we might make a little bit bigger. And another copy behind this layer here, behind the castle layer. Let's put that behind. We've got some birds, quite a few birds going on here. And that looks pretty good. Let's group these 3 layers together. call that birds 1. One here, birds 2, just at the back here. On the birds 1, let's add a mask to that. Grabbing our brush, bringing our flow down to about 10. Let's see if we can get rid of some of these harsh lines here. Got all of our birds in place. I'm going to add another adjustment down here on my adjustments. This one I'm going to add a recolor, and I'm going to bring this all the way into the blues. The blue about there looks pretty good. Drop the opacity 40%, looking pretty good. I quite like the way that looks. So we're going to add a few little highlights to our nights now. Let's come down here and add an exposure and clip that to our night. Let's make that quite light, really quite light about there. And then let's invert that. Grab our brush, we'll bring our flow up a fair bit, maybe to about 50% on this one. I'm going to pick a bit of a harder brush. Our flow is about 50, around the 50%, and we're on our left side night here on that exposure level. So our color should be white, so we'll change that to white. Make our brush a little bit bigger, and I'm going to zoom in quite a bit onto the night here, and I'm just going to add some little highlights. Make my brush a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to add some little highlights here and down flagpole. Command 0 to zoom out a little bit. So we'll add the same highlights to the right side. So let's open up the right side, add an adjustment, another exposure, and let's clip that to our night and lighten that quite a bit. And again, let's invert that, Command I. Back on our brush, still at 50%. Let's zoom in again and make our brush a little bit bigger to add some of those highlights as well. Doing it fairly quickly so you guys can take your time on this. Down that staff or flag. Command 0. Like I said, you guys can take a little bit more time and add a few more little highlights to where you think they need to be. And that's looking pretty good at the moment. What we'll do is add a little bit of clarity to our foreground. Just going to make that a little bit smaller. So on our live filters, I'm going to add a clarity out to the top. Bring that all the way up to 100. I'm going to invert that as well with the Command I. Again on my brush, fairly big brush, I'm just going to paint some of that clarity just on the foreground here. Don't want to mess with the background at all. On top again, one more adjustment with our curves. Just in the middle here, a little bit darker. A little bit flatter there, our S curve that we normally do. And then just one last little thing above this background layer here, a new pixel layer. Use my color picker here and maybe just this sort of bluey color here. Activate that. I'm going to change my brush. If you don't have this brush, you can use a really nice soft brush. I'm using this Frost brush. Make the brush a little bit bigger. And I'm going to paint in some frosty atmosphere. So there you go, everybody. That is my tutorial for this week. 7 different photos to create the Night's Guard. If you have enjoyed the tutorial, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when my next tutorial is coming out. I do have a free LUT for you over on the Buy Me a Coffee site, so head over there, you can download that LUT. That is all of this color and all of these adjustments just added into one LUT that you can just download and add to your photo. If you'd like to support my channel, you can also do that on the Buy Me a Coffee site. But until next time, I'm going to say to you, stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you in my next video.